Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I've been watching some of the other keynote presentations this week, and I've seen a theme, and the theme seems to be a call to action. And I wanted to start off our presentation today to talk about why we need to act. I had the pleasure of speaking at a conference out west a few weeks ago when John Malloy did the closing. And John said, wow, this initiative's fantastic. We've been talking about this for 15 years. And that's a really sad statement. Talking about anything for 15 years is sad when you do it as an adult, but when you do it when our obligation is to take care of the future, which is the children of this country, is really a sad situation. So I want to run through a few statistics, but I would say that we do a great job. If you look at the PISA scores and you look at education, Canada does a wonderful job, and I'm proud of you, and you should be proud of yourselves for what you do for this country's youth and what you do, more importantly, for this country's future, because let's be under no illusion. Our time has passed. It is their time now, and we have to make sure that they're ready for that time. And when we look at the situation in Canada, we're in a great place. And there's the provincial competition when we look at educational outcomes, whether it be math or literacy or wherever it may be. But the important thing is Canada as a whole as we move it forward. But we've done well, but I say we must do better. And when you look at things like this slide, inequality is a barrier to entry. And inequality is not only a barrier to entry in the classroom, but in society. And unless we face it in the classroom, we'll never move society. And you can move society. Because there is nothing more poignant than a classroom that decides it's going to do something new, because that brings around change. And a statistic that shocked me as somebody from outside the shores of Canada, that 1 in 5 lives below the poverty line. And we can change that. We can change that with education. Because education creates problems, but it's the only thing that can cure problems. And that's even worse when you talk about our First Nations. Over 40% of the population of First Nations are living below the poverty line. And then you look at the effect that the poverty line has. Kids in 2nd and 3rd grade are performing less than 30%, less than a third as well as those from a higher socioeconomic position. And that worsens by the time you get to 6th grade. By the time you get to 6th grade, habitual patterning is set. And inadvertently, as people, as parents, as educators, as principals, as administrators and governments, we are pigeonholing kids. We are saying because of your socioeconomic background, because your current roots, because of the place of your father or your mother's birth, the job that your grandparents did, your likelihood is you're going to go that way. And that's inequality. And we could be leaving behind future leaders of industry, countries, scientists, change makers, evangelists for good, because of how they're treated, because they're different. And that's just plain wrong. And when you look at dropouts, over 50% of the dropouts come from the socioeconomic difficult backgrounds of below $30,000 a year. It's staggering. But there's something we can do. And don't let John Malloy say, we've been talking about this for another year, because I charge you with an action to make a difference. Because in your classroom, in your school, in your school board, you can affect change. I've been looking at some of the other videos, and there's a common theme about being bold and time for action and be a maverick. Well, you know what? I'm sick of hearing it. I've been in this business for 19 months, and all I hear is what we can't do and how political it is and the barrier to entry and what we want to do. But you're all noble. You chose this profession because you care. So whether you call it being a maverick or whether you call it being fearless or whatever you call it, the time is now. The capability is now. And if you look at each grade of around 400,000 students, are we prepared to let another 400,000 have their opportunity narrowed because we're in action? Or are we going to be bold, and are we going to be fearless? Because if you do that, and you look at some of these statistics, this is the 2010 study from TDSB, we can wipe these things away. the relevance of them can be diminished. We in this room can play a part. One person talking to 30 kids and 30 kids becoming 30 parents with 300 kids. Generationally, we can change. And people say it takes a village. And I say no, it takes a teacher. And if a teacher does what they really love, no principal's going to stop you. No superintendent's going to hold you back. No director of education's going to pull you back. And no minister of education will say no to a better educational outcome for today's youth. So there is no reason why, with the capabilities we've got today in learning methodologies, working with outstanding educators, that we can't change that. And I say this, socioeconomics should not be a barrier to education. Socioeconomics should not depict the type of job that you move to. It should not close doors. It should not allow you not to move forward and do anything you want to do. And people talk about technology in a classroom. And I saw a superhero run out here yesterday, and I was literally watching it on my iPhone. I thought, geez, how do I follow that? So I put my spandex suit on. I thought, no, Steve, that won't go well. But that's it. That's the only thing that matters. It doesn't matter where you came from. It only matters where you're going. So when you're in a classroom and you're talking to kids, we have to be oblivious to that. But there are so many barriers that people don't realize affect the future of a country. I'm on record publicly of saying my success in running Canada's largest educational and only educational publishing company is going to be based in about 30 years, when hopefully I'm sat on a deck somewhere drinking something cold and I'm looking at the GDP. Because I say something that nobody else has ever said that I've ever heard, and that is, you can drive GDP. The problem with the cost of healthcare in this company is in your hands. Because through education, greater jobs will come, greater earnings will come, greater healthcare will come through education, and the company's GDP will improve. It's a great nation. And are you prepared to push it the wrong way because of another year that we don't give the kids the ability to learn in a 21st century method, to drive outcomes in something that's relevant? 30% of the kids who will graduate this year and move forward to post-secondary, the jobs that they fill in 4 or 5 years' time, today don't even exist. How do you ready somebody for something that doesn't yet exist? And that's a way that you have to look at this. It's competency-based. It's 21st century. It's immersive. It's giving them the ability to communicate, to work as a team, but more importantly, to give them desire, to give them belief, to give them the energy to go and do what they want to do, because like I said at the beginning, it's their time. And to do that, if you look at this, the role in teaching is to give them the ability to learn they want to learn. Imagine, if you will, a moment of telling your students, enough, stop, get outside, it's recess, stop learning, you've done enough. Enough homework, I've been looking at how much you've done. Enough, go, have the summer. Rather than sending them home with something to read because they're falling behind, or telling them they need to do more homework because, frankly, they're not doing enough when measured to their peers. So don't measure to their peers. Allow them to fulfill their own excellence. And by doing that, as coaches and mentors and working with them, we can change the world. But what lies before us is probably the largest challenge we've had. Because as we move forward to a world of AI, there are things that are going to change. And I had the pleasure once of sharing a cocktail with a guy called Elon Musk, who has the most dystopian view of artificial intelligence I've ever heard. And Elon's quite brilliant, but he's somewhat oxymoronic, because he says AI is going to destroy the world, so he's going to create a community on Mars. But at the same time, he's designing his cars to know where you want to go and when you want to go. He's building AI into his vehicles, so when you get into a car, it can self-drive through GPS navigation and location services to a degree of accuracy like we've never seen. And he knows if you get in your car at 5 o'clock, you're going from your classroom to home, and you can have a sleep because you've had a busy day, and he'll let AI drive you home. So he trusts it with your life, but he doesn't trust it with his. And I had another distinct honor to work with a guy who decided that socialization could help drive future community and change the world. And his name is Mark Zuckerberg. And he's recently gone through some pretty negative press. But I'll tell you that Mark has a different view of AI, and that is it's supplementary to learning. It's supportive for teachers. It's good for the future. It eliminates waste. It will alter the structure of our nation and the structure of the world, but ultimately, it's accretive, not dilutive. Now, both of those guys are way smarter than I am, and all I will tell you is my prediction will be right, and that's that one of them's right and one of them's wrong. So I've got that covered. So let's talk about technology in the classroom. When I joined this industry 18 months ago, I worked with, honestly, some of the best and the brightest people that I've ever worked with. And I asked them, could they give me some landscape? Could they tell me what it looked like? I'd been 10 years in the entertainment market where I'd been involved in 3 areas: the movie business, the music business, and the games business. And they went through this digital transformation. The digital transformation nearly killed music, frankly, because of arrogance. And there's a TV advert now that talks about, what's going on with the internet and streaming, and that's going to kill the CD business. Don't worry, it'll never catch on. Nearly killed music. The games industry embraced digital. They embraced it as a support for the Blu-ray disc that carries most of the data to play the game. And I look at that and think there's a parallel here, because if you can embrace technology to support the teacher, because the teacher is the pivotal point, then you're going to succeed. And then the third one's the movie industry, and they just had a land grab. And I looked at the movie industry, and I think they have done what we as educational publishers and technologists have done, and that's that they've overcomplicated it. Quite frankly, I'll tell you, I think we've done a crap job. I think that the reason technology doesn't work in the classroom is because everybody's waiting for it to settle down so you know what the landscape is, and then you'll embrace it. But what do? We keep adding new ones and new ones and new ones and new ones. We have to make it simple, and I say this very respectfully, but not with you in mind, but with our consumer, with the consumer of education, and that's the kids. Because what we all do is all about the kids. And 2.8 children per device as a national average. What do you do as educators? Okay, you 10, come with me. I'm going to teach you in a 21st century manner. You 20 sit in the corner. I'll get to you tomorrow. It's probably not going to work. So that was a problem, and it surprised me when I saw that average. So then I speak with a lot of you across the country and a lot of the school boards and individual provinces, and more recently with countries around the world, and people say BYOD. Every kid's got a device, let's do BYOD. Let me tell you what I think about BYOD. BYOD canonizes inequity. BYOD does not create equality, because can you imagine how you would feel sat in a classroom, 29, and you look around you and you've got your dad's old Dell 486 from when he got laid off from a General Motors assembly plant 8 years ago, and they said, take your computer home with you, good luck with your future, and he passed it along to his son. And then little Mary sat beside you who's got a brand new MacBook Pro in space gray or gold. How unequal must you feel? I went to school in England most of the time, and they had school uniforms. And I never really understood why. But I came from an area that had a horrendous spectrum of poverty to wealth. And it was an equalizer. Because when you were in the classroom and you were wearing your school uniform, you weren't different. When my kids were born, I lived in the United States. And there were no school uniforms. And it was inequitable. And I'm not pushing for school uniforms, but back then, 20 years ago, I was starting to see a pattern that it didn't really resonate with me until now. That's painful for kids. When you look at kids from indigenous backgrounds, or you look at kids who are coming into our society, who will build our society for our future, from Syria and from Afghanistan and Pakistan and Eastern European countries, going to school and being different segments you. And you never know what a 1% turn does for the rest of your life. Because if I stand here today and I look at you and I turn 1%, it doesn't really change my appearance to you. But in 10 or 20 years' time, that 1% is miles away from where I look today. So moving them 1%, you might not think or get any gratitude from what you've just done as a coach or a mentor for that kid, but you might have moved them from the shop floor to the boardroom. You might have moved them from the streets of illegality to the classroom. You might have moved them from being abusers to mentors. And we don't do it because we want them to come back and thank us, and I know sometimes they do. But isn't it enough to know that those of you in this room today didn't wait another year to change society, to drive GDP, to give better health care, and more importantly, to create good parents who'll do better for the next generation? We've got to do something. So, I started to look and said, okay, what are we going to do? And I got this huge brain power together who I have the pleasure of working with every day, and more importantly, working for every day. And we started looking, how do you make equality in the classroom? And the first thing we looked at, and this has been a bit of a theme, I think, not all devices are created equal. So again, back to equity, because if you've got different devices, you've got BYOD, how a device operates, whether it be video cards, memory, processing speed, screen color, definition, whatever it may be, has to be the same for kids. You're asking them to create a level playing field, and to do that, you have to give them the playing field that's level. You have to let them compete on their own individual strengths. So take away the variables and let the winners be winners, and the doctors be doctors, and the nurses be nurses, and the teachers be teachers, by giving them the same place to start from. And then you look at it and say, okay, I've had this discussion with many hundreds of educators, parents, administrators, and politicians. The politicians' conversations went on longer than the others. About screen time. Don't our kids have enough screen time? Sure. But not all screen time is created equal. If the screen time is giving a student the ability to tumble in a 21st learning environment, that when they come out of it, they're brighter, more thoughtful, and more inquisitive than when they went into it, that's not the same as Facebook. I said that at our recent board meeting, and I have a guy on our board who's the Chief Technology Officer of Facebook. He said, can you take that out of your speech, because Facebook's really good? I said, no. But the importance of it is a customer-centric and a consumer-centric focus to make sure we give kids what they want. So we're going to talk a little bit later and give you some of the student experience of what we've done with what we've delivered to the classroom called Edwin. But it's got to be consumer-centric. If you look at consumer centricity, there's a world of examples of failure and success. And a lot of people think it's about price. And it has nothing to do with price. It has everything to do with being on the money. Everything to do with giving the consumer what they want. When the iPhone came out, the average price of a cell phone with Rogers, Bell, and TELUS was $49. iPhone came out at $499, but add value and became the world's best-selling cell phone. BlackBerry, a great Canadian institution, which was called RIM at the time, decided they were going to fight it and brought out the BlackBerry Bold with the camera and this, that, and the other. And they brought it out at $299. It was going to kill iPhone overnight. iPhone sales doubled. If you derive value, it succeeds. The consumer has the choice. You have to give them the choice. Listen to your kids. Personalized learning is something that we all talk about all the time, but how personalized is it really if it's still being told this is how to learn personally. Somewhat oxymoronic. Technology is a tool, not a product. I say to our people all the time, we make textbooks and we make a lot of them. I don't care if we deliver to the classroom on paper or on technology. It's not my choice. It's your choice. Ultimately, it's the consumer's choice. But I give them a choice that's compelling, and they'll choose a choice that gives them better outcomes. An aid to pre-assessment. There's so much talk about pre-assessment and PD and PL and all those things, and we're trying to build something, and we're putting it all together, and we have hundreds and hundreds of architects who help us do it, and that's the kids working on it every day, and we'll get to that. Establish learning goals. Promote self-directed learning is probably the most important. What measure and correct, and then aid teachers' journey into mentors and coaches from being the teachers that you've been so nobly for so long. I tweeted recently to Mixed Review that Socrates is dead. That's probably not a surprise to anybody. So why are we still Socratic in our methods of teaching? There are new ways to teach. If somebody said, we are going to cook dinner tonight over an open wood fire, and I don't mean one night when you're out camping, I mean every night when you get home from work, it would be laughable. If somebody, when you walked in and said, can I have a drink, and they said, sure, and threw you a bucket and told you to walk down to the river, it would be laughable. So think about progression. It's important. I'm not being dilutive or disrespectful of the old ways. I'm just saying now's the time to move, and we should move with you collectively as a market for the good of the future of our kids. And I believe, and I know it's self-serving, Edwin is a key to the start of a journey, and I'll run through what Edwin is and talk about it. So this is Edwin. First day of school, every kid in the classroom gets delivered a device. Every device is the same. Every kid is now equal in their new equity. They type in the name, it's now fully loaded with platform tools, with partner stuff, and I'll run through it. All the content, online, offline experience, the ability to go up and down grades, to go exploring in a method which is truly personalized to each and every student. From 2 students to 200 million students. Imagine a learning journey for 200 million students globally that was individualized to something that was important to them. Think about what's important to you. My daughter comes home from university on Tuesday. I'm delighted. She walks in the house is illuminated. I can't wait for her to come home. That's important to me. Imagine that illumination as a student going to school. I can't wait to go to school. Imagine going home from a fun day at school, eat your dinner, say hi to your siblings, stroke the dog, get Edwin out because you want to go back to work. Imagine that. It exists. Edwin's a device for every student, for every level and style, all personal ways, comfort and ease, and it removes technology as a barrier. Those are big words. People talk about technology all the time. I don't care about the technology. We're not in the device business. We're in the learning business. This is just an enabler. So someone said to me, he's actually one of our people. Why do we want to go into the hardware business? We're in the textbook business. And I said, no, we're in the learning business. It's the old adage of the candle maker going out of business because he thought he was a candle maker, he was a provider of light. The technology is just a delivery method. It's about an equitable solution with deep catalog, but most importantly, personalized learning for every one of you, for every one of your students, for every parent, for every child that's to come. Personalized learning, you have a choice. And when you have that choice, your level of engagement is far more. Your outcome, your inquisitiveness is far greater. Your ability to go on searches in Edwin on a multidisciplinary method, and I hope some of you were at the stand. I'm told that my team, we had great responses out there. There's a search engine. So imagine you've got a unit, and on that unit, you've got all your curriculum strands, you've got all of the resources, you've got very, very rich resources and partners, and I'll talk more about those. But you want to search about water. So when you type into the search engine water, and yesterday I met with Google's president, and I told him, to everybody else's in the room's great amusement, that Edwin was what Google wanted to be if it ever grew up. He didn't even smile. I don't think he felt well. You type in water and it searches every resource, cross-curricular, so you've got biology, history, literacy, math. You've got all of these different areas that it searches, and you can build your own learning journey in a safe sandbox, in a approved curriculum for every province and country around the world on an individualized basis to be able to learn about water. The specific gravity. What's specific gravity? Learn about what SG is. To learn about the makeup of water. To learn about the shortage of water that's going on today in Africa. To learn about hydroelectronic dams. To learn about water cleanliness. To learn about desalination on nuclear submarines. Nobody else can do that in the classroom. You can't do that because you work within the confines of the way we work. And if you type in one word, it'll give you a definition. But what this gives you is an environment to wander around in and learn things that you may never learn. And accidentally I used the example of water. I was actually sat in bed one night fiddling around with Edwin, and I type in water, and up came Angelina Jolie in the search engine. I'm like, Angelina Jolie. I click on Angelina Jolie, and it goes to UNICEF. She'd been in sub-Saharan Africa working on clean water on UNICEF. And then it went back to the example of how many gallons of water there were per student and blah, blah, blah. And then it went into the cost of water. The cost of a bottle of smart water was $3.27, but the cost of 1,000 liters of water in Ontario, arguably the cleanest drinking water in the world, is 27 cents. How the hell do you find that out in a textbook? 27 cents we pay for 1,000 liters of water in Ontario today in your average. That's pretty good. No wonder smart water sold for $3.1 billion. So Edwin's an ecosystem with everything included. So what we did was, okay, how do we make it world-class? And we only have one mantra at Nelson, and that's to be a world-class company. Not a world-class company in education, not a world-class publisher, world-class. World-class when we meet you, the way we deport ourselves, the way we have our cleanliness in our offices, the way our delivery works, the way our pricing is, the way our value is. Everything we do, we strive to be world-class. And if not, we don't deserve to live another 104 years. We should die now. Because evolution creates a future for those who deliver value. Whatever that may be. Restaurants with poor food, close. Airlines with poor service, go out of business. Car companies that make poor product that nobody wants to buy, get bought or sold. And we've got to be the same. When there's a question in education, I've told my team the answer has to be Nelson. But then it comes, okay, that's great, but how do we build everything? And I said, we don't. There's two mantras. There's fearful, of which comes nothing, or there's fearless, of which everything can be derived. So we said, okay, let's partner with people. So we did a deal and embedded in Edwin is Dreambox. For those of you who don't know Dreambox, it's a great math program with gamification. We've seen tremendous outcomes with the school. It's on Edwin and it's there. We didn't have to build our own interactive, intuitive math program. We partnered with a world-class one that was already there. And then we went to Myon, which is a digital library that tracks reading journeys for kids. So when you've got a grade 6 reader in your grade 8 class, you can pull a new resource down or send them to Myon. They can look and learn. Then we've got Grade Slam. One of the great things that we found working with some phenomenally thoughtful educators are, you know when a kid's getting it. And you know where you need to spend your time in the classroom. And you've got 30 kids, and not all time is equal. So imagine if you've got a kid who you know understands the principle or whatever that particular subject or discipline is you're teaching, but they're just being lazy today. But you know that little Johnny in the corner is really not getting it, and he really could do with your help and your time. Send him to your tutor. On Edwin, type in, you've got text-based tutoring who can see the instance that Johnny's got on his screen and work with him to be able to go back and forth in text. We think that's alien, but that's how this society today and this generation today communicates. I was in a classroom recently and someone was communicating back and forth, talking to a tutor who I believe was in Montreal, had just come back off the skiing holiday in Banff. And I'm looking at these text bubbles going back and forth, and I thought, should I be upset that this kid's like texting about his holiday? And I thought, you know what? He's building a relationship. He's building a relationship with his tutor, and then it was like, okay, Paul, what is it you wanted? I've got this problem that I'm doing in math, and I'm really not getting it. Can you share your page with me? Shared the page, and the tutor goes, oh, I see what you're doing. Have you thought about this? And then on the screen comes up another text bubble. What if you did it this way? The kid tries, run it again, Paul, let me see. I get it. Well done, Paul, we're good. Talk to you soon. Bubble disappears off the screen. Teacher doesn't waste a minute with a kid who really did get it, but at that moment in time, needed a bit of attention. Essay Jack is another tool that's on Edwin that sits to create essay construction, help and advice. It's another great partner. Land School's great. Land School creates the ability for the teacher to see an instance of every kid's screen. So one of the teachers who's in one of our schools using Edwin said to me at a session we had actually at our office in Toronto, this is great. This is the only time in 29 years of teaching I've actually had total visibility into every student at one time. One of the students said, yeah, it's kind of like a friendly big brother. But what it does is that you can see how people are engaging and at the same time measure the outcomes and see what the correlation is between engagement and outcome. 21st century tools. Twig is video. There's a reason that Instagram and Snapchat are two of the most valuable companies on earth. And that's because kids today love visualization. From a short message to an instant photograph to a 3-minute video clip, they learn, they absorb through visualization. Twig provides 3-minute videos of subjects that are really important to the learning outcome. And those different types of learners, this is really a growing area that can support it. So they can be embedded in a subject, they can be rolling around through all of these rich areas I've told you, then they can go into interactive, they can do some interactive exercises going back and forth, but then the video plays and for 2 or 3 minutes, that's that aha moment. That's that moment that you just cemented retention of learning for the subject that without the video may not have been there. And that's individual. That's not for every kid, that's some of them. But if you're talking about the death of a president, or the one time England won the World Cup, and you can go in and just see a video of that moment, it's emotive. It brings something, it's different. Retention. 21st century learning. So, with that, we've got a small video because, honestly, I could prattle on about this for hours and hours and hours. But what's most important is what the teachers think, what the administrators think, what the parents think, and most importantly, what the kids think. And this is what the kids and the parents and the teachers think.
Back in February, the director came in to Riverside and asked if we would be interested in participating in a pilot program through Nelson. And I said, Nelson develops textbooks, and I never use a textbook. And he said, no, trust us, because Nelson's onto something pretty incredible.
When we first talked to people about Edwin, we got some funny looks. But with the involvement of some thought-provoking educators, we brought Edwin to reality.
At Nelson, it's our firm belief that you need to get a device in the student's hands, the same device for every student. And on that device, you need to have trusted content that not only satisfies the curriculum goals, but is also created in a manner that keeps students engaged.
Imagine all your curriculum resources, your school planner, your assignments, even tutoring 24/7, all from a single screen.
So the first day I got my Edwin was pretty cool. We got to take it home and explore it.
Well, I think when they realized that they could take the device home with them, they had that added responsibility to take learning home with them.
I tried the Edwin program, which is actually really cool because you have all your stuff on your library.
If you graph your pattern, it's a linear pattern, it's not straight, there's something that's gone wrong.
They don't know what they do without it now. I know we've talked to some parents, and they talk about the fact that their son or daughter has some learning challenges and how this has become an equalizer for them.
Taking notes was always difficult for me because I struggle with writing. I highlight the text if I'm having troubles, and I get it to read to me.
Jeffrey absolutely loves his Edwin. It's giving him a pathway to learn all kinds of things that he didn't have access to before.
Our approach to building Edwin is built around listening to teachers and listening to students on how they want to use technology in the classroom. And to the best of our ability, taking that feedback and as quickly as possible, putting something in front of them.
I thought that learning the way that I used to was the only way to learn. And now I'm like, wow, like actually this is the better way of learning.
Clearly, this is a company that sees the future of education and realizes that it has to be interactive, it has to be digital, and it has to be engaging for the kids.
The Edwin project has allowed everybody else to see how smart Jeffrey actually is.
What's so important to me is that everybody involved in this journey understands the part they played. So to the students, to the educators, and the parents, thank you for what you've helped us do. And as you see Edwin roll out around the world, remember, you were part of it.
So, we've had children across the country work with some of the people I admire the most, and that's the educators in the classroom who were bold enough to take the step to try something, not to talk about another year. To a superintendent and to educational directors who cared what their future of their kids looked like. And for that I will always be eternally grateful. But the greatest feedback is what those kids said. We've all been to school. We were all kids. I thought the way I learned was the only way of learning. We're not revolutionizing curriculum. We haven't created anything that doesn't exist in other areas in disparate fashions. But we took threads of beauty and we weaved it together into the greatest educational tapestry that's ever been produced, I think. And we went out and we searched the world for something else that existed like that. And it didn't. And I can say that because we got a worldwide patent for an educational ecosystem, and not because we want to rob anybody, not because we want to overcharge, not because of anything else, because I wanted to protect it. I was very fortunate to have dinner with the Prime Minister and talk about a vision of the future for education. And I made an undertaking that we would launch in Canada for one full commercial year before going to any other country. And I'm keeping that promise. And I think that we can make a difference by working with education companies, by working with partners, by working with teachers and students and administrators and school boards and superintendents and ministries to really hold Canada on a 21st century educational pedestal. And that's great. But honestly, I don't give a shit about that. What I care about is giving kids the ability to be ready for that future that they don't know exists yet. So when they get there and I'm sat on that deck that I spoke to you about, I'll enjoy my glass of wine and I'll have a lot of fun and I'll remember days like this when industry pivoted. Thank you very much indeed.